Did you know there's a worm in a Siberian lab right now that was already ancient when the pyramids were built? The last woolly mammoths were still alive, and it woke up anyway? Permafrost doesn't just freeze things, it pauses them. It holds a body, a moment, sometimes even a heartbeat, in a kind of suspended animation that modern science is still catching up to. Today, we're counting down 5 of the most horrifying animals Siberia's frozen ground has given back, starting with unsettling and ending with something that frankly shouldn't have been possible at all. 5. Sasha, the baby rhino nobody knew existed. In 2014, along the Semyuelyak River in Yakutia, hunters pulled a small, shrunken body out of a collapsing riverbank. It was a woolly rhinoceros calf, and it turned out to be the first juvenile woolly rhino ever discovered anywhere on Earth. Scientists named her Sasha after the man who found her. She died around 34,000 years ago. Her body had already been through a long, brutal decade before that. Even at her young age, researchers found her fur had grown in thick and reddish brown. Nothing like the pale, grizzled coats adult woolly rhinos were assumed to have based on cave paintings and old bones. For decades, every scientific reconstruction of a woolly rhino had essentially been an educated guess. Sasha proved almost all of it wrong at once. What makes her unsettling isn't decay or violence, it's the reversal. Cave paintings, made by actual humans who'd seen these animals alive, turned out to be less reliable than a shrunken, frozen calf pulled out of a riverbank tens of thousands of years later. Her horn was still soft cartilage rather than fully hardened bone, telling researchers she'd been weaned but was nowhere near adulthood when whatever killed her happened. Nobody has ever determined a clear cause of death. She simply stopped, and the cold caught her before anything else could. An animal that rewrote its own species just by existing. Number 4 is where things stop being about biology and start being about a case of mistaken identity that took years to unravel. 4. The bear that wasn't supposed to exist. In 2020, reindeer herders on the remote Bolshoi-Liakovsky Island found the fully intact body of a mummified bear. Nose, teeth, fur, and organs still in place. Researchers were ecstatic. Based on where it was found and how it looked, they initially believed it was a short-faced bear, a massive Ice Age predator species that had vanished roughly 22,000 years ago and had never once been found with soft tissue intact anywhere on the planet. For 2 years, this specimen was treated as one of the rarest paleontological finds in Russian history. Then, in 2022, deeper genetic testing came back, and it upended everything. The bear wasn't an extinct short-faced bear at all. It was a completely ordinary brown bear, a species still alive today, except this one had died roughly 3,460 years ago, thousands of years more recently than anyone had assumed, and had simply been preserved so well that scientists mistook her for something out of deep prehistory. What's genuinely uncomfortable about this one is what it implies. If a team of trained specialists can misidentify a species for 2 full years just from how flawlessly the permafrost preserved it, how many other specimens sitting in Russian collections right now are quietly mislabeled, waiting for someone to run the test that finally catches the mistake? The ground didn't just preserve a body, it preserved a body good enough to fool the people whose entire job is not being fooled. A misidentification that took 2 years to catch. Number 3 doesn't confuse anyone about what it is. It confuses everyone about how it's still moving. 3. The rotifer, a creature that came back from the dead. In 2015, researchers drilling nearly 12 feet into permafrost near Siberia's Alizaya River pulled up soil samples containing something almost too small to see without a microscope: a bedelloid rotifer, a microscopic worm-like animal. Radiocarbon dating on the surrounding sediment placed its age at roughly 24,000 years old. Then scientists thawed it out, and it moved. Not just moved, it began feeding, and within days it started reproducing asexually, cloning itself the exact same way its ancestors had 24,000 years earlier, before the last ice age had even finished. Rotifers are already famous among biologists for surviving radiation, starvation, and near-total dehydration, but nobody had ever proven one could survive over 2 decades of millennia frozen solid and simply pick up where it left off. Here's the part that unsettles researchers most. This isn't a mammoth or a bear that died and stayed dead, preserved but gone. This is an animal that was, by every reasonable definition, still alive the entire time, existing in some suspended, dormant state for longer than human civilization has had written language, and it came back the moment conditions allowed. As permafrost across Siberia continues thawing at record rates, scientists have started asking a genuinely uncomfortable question. What else is down there in that same dormant state, just waiting for the ground to warm up enough to let it start moving again? A creature the Ice Age never actually finished killing. Number 2 is the opposite kind of horror, something whose death is written all over its body in permanent freeze-frame detail. 2. Jour, the wolf pup frozen mid-sleep. In 2016, outside Dawson City in Canada's Yukon Territory, a gold miner blasting frozen mud apart with a high-pressure water cannon uncovered something curled into a tight, compact ball. It was a female gray wolf pup, and researchers later confirmed she had died approximately 57,000 years ago, making her one of the oldest and most complete Ice Age wolf mummies ever found anywhere on the planet. She was named Jour, meaning wolf, in the language of the Trondak-Huichin First Nation, on whose land she was discovered. Her fur, skin, muscle, and internal organs were essentially untouched, missing only her eyes. She died at around 8 weeks old, and isotope analysis of her tissue revealed something researchers weren't expecting. Instead of the typical wolf pup diet of land mammals, her last meals had been almost entirely aquatic, likely salmon, suggesting her pack had been fishing a river system that doesn't behave anything like modern wolf territories do today. What makes her genuinely disturbing to look at isn't a wound or an injury, it's the posture. She was found curled into the exact resting position a living wolf pup naturally sleeps in, nose tucked toward her tail, as if she'd simply lain down for a nap in her den and the ground had quietly closed over her without waking her up. Researchers believe the den likely collapsed suddenly, burying her before she had any chance to react, which is the only theory that explains why an animal built to survive Arctic winters shows absolutely no sign of struggle at all. A pup that looks like she's sleeping, not dead. Number 1 isn't peaceful at all. It's a mammoth that died in a way scientists still describe as one of the most violent Ice Age deaths ever documented. 1. Yucca, the mammoth with a predator's claw, marks still in her skin. In 2010, tusk hunters searching the coastline near the Laptov Sea in northern Siberia found a woolly mammoth so well preserved that her reddish-blonde fur, her trunk, and even fatty tissue from her hump were all still intact. She was named Yucca, and she died an estimated 39,000 years ago at around age 6 to 9. To this day, she remains one of the best preserved woolly mammoths ever recovered. At first, researchers assumed she'd simply fallen into a bog, the way so many other frozen mammoths had. Then they looked closer at her skin. Deep gouges and cut marks covered her body, some clearly made by the claws of a large predator, likely a cave lion, and others disturbingly straight and precise, the kind left behind by stone tools rather than teeth. Her spine had been separated from her body, and several bones were missing entirely. That combination turned Yucca into one of the most contested mammoth specimens ever found. If the tool marks are real, she'd be direct physical evidence that ancient humans in the Arctic were not just scavenging mammoth carcasses. They were actively confronting or fighting off predators over tens of thousands of years earlier than most models place humans in that exact region. Some researchers argue the marks came entirely from lion claws and later natural damage. Others insist the cut patterns are too clean, too deliberate, to be anything other than human hands. Nobody has definitively settled the debate, which means the most disturbing part of Yucca isn't what happened to her. It's that scientists still can't agree on who did it. So, thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe if you want more of these. Bye.